At 60 years old, Michael Jordan thought he knew everything about his father's death 31 years ago. He was wrong. When an unexpected phone call from his father's long-lost best friend reveals a wooden box that James Jordan left behind, filled with letters for every milestone in Michael's life and a final secret about the night he died, the basketball legend discovers that his father's murder was far from random. What Billy Thompson has been hiding for 3 decades will not only bring the Jordan family to tears, but force Michael to make the most important decision of his life: pursue justice for his father's killers, or honor a family legacy that stretches back to his great-great-grandmother's hand-built house and a multi-million-dollar inheritance that was stolen over a century ago. The morning sun cast long shadows across Michael Jordan's kitchen table as he sat with his usual breakfast: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and black coffee. At 60 years old, Michael had settled into routines that brought him peace. Tuesday mornings were for quiet reflection, reading the sports section, and planning his day around the Charlotte Hornets office. The house felt different these days, quieter. His children were grown with families of their own. The basketball courts that once echoed with the sounds of pickup games now stood silent in his backyard. But Michael didn't mind the quiet. It gave him time to think, to remember, to appreciate how far he'd come. His phone buzzed against the granite countertop. The caller ID showed an unknown number with a 910 area code: Wilmington, North Carolina. Michael almost didn't answer. He got plenty of calls from people claiming to know him, wanting money, or trying to sell him something. But something about this particular call felt different. "Hello," Michael said, setting down his coffee cup. "Is this Michael Jeffrey Jordan?" The voice on the other end was elderly, with a slight tremor that comes with age. There was something familiar about the accent, the way the man pronounced his middle name. "Yes, this is Michael. Who am I speaking with?" There was a pause, like the caller was gathering courage. "My name is William Thompson. People call me Billy. I was your daddy's best friend back in Wilmington, way before you were famous. I knew you when you were just knee-high to a grasshopper, running around in those little shorts your mama made you wear." Michael's world stopped. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers, clattering against the saucer. Billy Thompson. The name hit him like a lightning bolt from 30 years ago. His father had talked about Billy all the time. Billy who taught him how to fix cars. Billy who stood by him when Michael's grandfather died. Billy who was like a brother to James Jordan. Billy. Michael's voice came out as barely a whisper. "My God. Where have you been? We looked for you after Dad passed. We asked everyone in Wilmington. Nobody knew where you went." Billy's voice cracked. "I know, son. I know you did. I heard about it from folks at the old garage, but I just couldn't face y'all after James died. It hurt too much. Your daddy was the best man I ever knew." Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. He hadn't cried thinking about his father in years, but hearing Billy's voice brought everything flooding back. James Jordan laughing with Billy in the garage. The two men working on cars together, their hands covered in grease, their friendship as solid as the tools they shared. "I've been carrying something for 31 years, Michael," Billy continued, his voice getting stronger. "Something your daddy made me promise to give you when the time was right. I think the time is now." Michael's heart started racing. What could his father have left with Billy? Why would he give something to his best friend instead of keeping it home? "What are you talking about, Billy? What did Dad leave with you?" "Can't tell you over the phone, son. This is something you need to see with your own eyes. Something you need to hold in your own hands. It's been weighing on my heart for 3 decades. Michael stood up and started pacing around his kitchen. His mind was spinning with questions. Billy had disappeared right after the funeral. Michael remembered his mother asking about him, remembered his siblings wondering where James's best friend had gone during their time of grief. "Billy, I need to know. What happened to you? Why did you disappear?" Billy sighed deeply. "Your daddy's death broke something in me, Michael. We were closer than brothers. We shared everything, our dreams, our fears, our hopes for our children. When those men killed him on that road," Billy's voice trailed off, "I couldn't handle being around the family. Seeing your mama's tears, hearing your little sister cry. Every time I looked at y'all, I saw James. Every time someone mentioned his name, I felt like I was drowning." Michael understood. Grief affected people differently. Some people ran toward family, and others ran away. Billy had been a runner. "But you're calling now," Michael said. "After all these years, why now?" "Because I've been watching you, son, from far away." "But I've been watching. I see what kind of man you became. I see how you treat people, how you never forgot where you came from. Your daddy would be so proud." Billy paused, and Michael could hear him breathing heavily. "I only learned how to use the internet last month. Been going to the library in town, having the young folks teach me. I saw that your 60th birthday is coming up next month. Something about that number 60, it made me realize I can't take this secret to my grave." Michael felt goosebumps on his arms. "What secret?" "Billy, your daddy knew things." "Michael, he saw things coming before they happened. 3 weeks before he died, he brought me something. Told me if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to you when you turn 60. He said by then, you'd be wise enough to understand what it really means." The kitchen seemed to spin around Michael. His father had known something bad might happen. James Jordan had made plans, had prepared for his own death. "Billy, I need to see you. I need to see what Dad left. Can you come to Charlotte? I'm too old to travel far, son. Been having trouble with my heart. But if you can make it down to Wilmington this weekend, I got something that belongs to you. Something that's been waiting 31 years to come home." Michael didn't hesitate. "I'll be there Saturday morning. What's your address?" Billy gave him an address on South 3rd Street. Michael wrote it down with shaking hands. "Billy, one more thing. How did you know to call me today? How did you get my number?" Billy chuckled, and for a moment he sounded like the young man Michael remembered from his childhood. "Your daddy always said you were special, even when you were little. He used to tell me, 'Billy, that boy's going to be somebody important someday. And when he is, he's going to need to know where he came from.' I figured if you were important enough to be on TV every night, you'd be important enough to have a phone number I could find." Michael laughed despite his tears. "Dad always believed in me, even when I was just playing Little League. Especially then," Billy said. "He used to come to my house after your games just to talk about how well you played. Didn't matter if you won or lost. He was proud of how hard you tried." They talked for a few more minutes, with Billy sharing small memories and Michael asking questions about people from the old neighborhood. When they finally hung up, Michael sat in his kitchen staring at the address written on a napkin. He immediately called his mother, Dolores. She was 82 now but still sharp as ever. "Mama, you're not going to believe who just called me." "Who, baby?" "Billy Thompson, Dad's best friend from Wilmington." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Billy, oh my goodness, Michael. Where has he been all these years?" Michael explained the conversation, watching his mother's reaction even though he couldn't see her face. "He has something Dad left for me. Something he was supposed to give me when I turned 60. What could your father have left with Billy that he didn't leave with us?" "I don't know, Mama, but I'm going to find out this Saturday." After hanging up with his mother, Michael called his children. Jeffrey, his oldest son, was skeptical. "Dad, are you sure this guy is legit? Sounds like someone trying to take advantage of you." But Marcus, his middle son, disagreed. "No, Jeff, I remember Grandpa talking about Billy. He was real. Dad, you have to go see what this is about." His daughter Jasmine was emotional. "Daddy, what if Grandpa left you a letter? What if he had things he wanted to tell you that he never got the chance to say?" That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay in bed thinking about his father, about Billy, about secrets that had been kept for 31 years. What could James Jordan have known? What could he have seen coming? Michael got up and walked to his home office, where he kept family photos. He found his favorite picture of his father James standing next to his car, smiling, wearing the work clothes he loved. In the background of the photo, barely visible, was another man. Michael had never paid attention to him before, but now he looked closer. It was Billy Thompson. Younger and stronger, but unmistakably the same man who had just called him. The two friends stood together, both smiling, both unaware that their time was running short. Michael touched the glass covering the photo. "What did you leave for me, Dad?" he whispered. "What were you trying to tell me?" Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Michael woke up before sunrise, unable to sleep another minute. He had packed a small bag the night before, planning to stay overnight in Wilmington if needed. The 3-hour drive would give him time to think, to remember, to prepare for whatever Billy Thompson was going to show him. By 6 in the morning, Michael was on the road in his black SUV, heading east toward the coast. As he drove through the North Carolina countryside, memories came flooding back. This was the same route he used to take with his father to visit his grandparents when he was young. James would drive this exact highway, telling stories about his childhood, pointing out landmarks that meant something to the Jordan family. Michael remembered being 7 years old in the back seat, listening to his father talk about Wilmington. "That's where I learned to be a man," James used to say. "That's where I met the best friend a person could ever have." The best friend was Billy Thompson. Michael could picture him now, a tall, thin man with calloused hands and a laugh that filled up a room. Billy had a garage behind his house on Castle Street where he fixed cars for half the neighborhood. James Jordan would spend hours there after work, not because his car needed fixing, but because that's where friends went to talk about life. Michael pulled off the highway at the Wilmington exit and drove slowly through the downtown area. The city had changed a lot in 30 years. New buildings, new restaurants, new shopping centers, but some things looked exactly the same. The old courthouse where his grandfather used to take him to watch trials, the river where his father taught him to fish, the neighborhoods where 3 generations of Jordans had lived and worked. He found South 3rd Street without any trouble. It was a quiet neighborhood with small houses and big trees. Most of the homes looked like they'd been there for 50 years or more. Kids' bicycles sat in front yards. Elderly people sat on porches, watching the world go by. Number 412 was a modest white house with blue shutters, a small front porch held to rocking chairs, and a table with an old coffee can full of cigarette butts. The yard was neat but simple, grass that had been mowed recently and a few flowers planted by the front steps. Michael sat in his car for a moment, gathering his courage. 31 years. Billy Thompson had been carrying a secret for 31 years. What could it be? A letter, money, some kind of family treasure that James Jordan had hidden. Before he could change his mind, Michael got out of the car and walked to the front door. He knocked 3 times, his heart beating fast. The door opened slowly, and there stood Billy Thompson. He was older now, much older. His hair was completely silver, and his face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes were the same kind and bright, with just a hint of mischief. He was thinner than Michael remembered, wearing a clean white shirt and old blue jeans. "Lord have mercy," Billy said, his voice full of wonder. "Look at you." The 2 men stared at each other for a long moment. Then Billy stepped forward and wrapped Michael in a hug that felt like coming home. "You still got that same stubborn chin as your daddy," Billy said, tears in his eyes. "And you're still too tall for your own good." Michael laughed, feeling some of his nervousness disappear. "You look good, Billy. Really good. Come in. Come in. I got coffee ready and everything." Billy's house was small but clean. The living room had an old couch, a television that looked like it was from the 1990s, and walls covered with newspaper clippings. Michael looked closer and realized they were all about him, articles from his playing days, pictures from his championships, stories about his business success. "You kept all of these?" Michael asked, amazed. "Every single one," Billy said proudly. "I told you I've been watching you from far away. I got a whole scrapbook in the bedroom. Your daddy would have loved seeing all of this." Billy disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 cups of coffee and a photo album. He sat down on the couch next to Michael and opened the album to the first page. "Look at this," Billy said, pointing to a faded color photograph. Michael gasped. It was a picture of himself at about 10 years old, wearing a baseball uniform and holding a trophy. Next to him stood his father, beaming with pride. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was Billy Thompson, clapping his hands. "I remember this," Michael said softly. "This was when my little league team won the championship. Dad was so excited he bought ice cream for the whole team. He was so proud of you that day." Billy said, "He came to my house that night and talked for 2 hours about how well you played. Kept saying, 'Billy, Did you see how Michael never gave up, even when we were losing? He kept trying his hardest. Billy turned the page, revealing more photos. Michael as a teenager playing high school basketball. Michael in his college uniform at North Carolina. Michael shaking hands with other players after games. In many of the photos, James Jordan was visible in the background or standing on the sidelines. Your daddy went to every game he could, Billy explained. He used to call me after each one to tell me what happened, even when you were in college. Even when you turned professional, he'd call and say, Billy, you should have seen Michael tonight. He did something amazing. Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. He had known his father was proud of him, but seeing this evidence of how much James had shared his pride with his best friend was overwhelming. He never stopped talking about you, Billy continued. All of his children, but especially you. He used to say you reminded him of his own father, stubborn, determined, never willing to quit when things got hard. Billy turned more pages, showing Michael pictures he had never seen before. His father working on cars at Billy's garage, his parents at their wedding, with Billy standing as best man. His father holding Michael as a baby, with Billy looking over his shoulder. I was there the day you were born, Billy said quietly. Your daddy called me from the hospital at 2 in the morning, said, Billy, you got to come see this baby. He's going to be special. How could he know that when I was just born? Billy smiled. Your daddy had a gift for seeing things in people. He could tell right away if someone had character, if they had fight in them, the minute he held you. He knew you were going to do great things. They spent the next hour looking through photos and listening to Billy's stories. Michael learned things about his father that he had never known. How James would work extra hours at the garage to buy Michael new sneakers for basketball. How James would drive to Billy's house after Michael's games just to replay every moment, every shot, every play. He loved all you kids, Billy said, but you were his heart, Michael. You were the son he saw himself in. He used to tell me about teaching you to shoot baskets in your backyard. Said you'd stay out there until it was too dark to see the rim. I remember that, Michael said. He'd rebound for me for hours. He told me about those times. Said those were some of the happiest moments of his life. Just him and you and a basketball. No crowds, no pressure, just a father teaching his son. Billy closed the photo album and looked directly at Michael. Your daddy was planning big things for you, son, even when you were little. He had dreams about your future, but he was also worried. Worried about what? About success changing you, about fame making you forget where you came from, about people trying to hurt you because of who you became. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Hurt me? Billy stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street. Your daddy was smart about people, Michael. He could see things coming before they happened. He knew that when you became famous, there would be people who wanted to bring you down, people who couldn't stand seeing a young black man rise as high as you did. Billy turned back to Michael, his expression serious. 3 weeks before he died, your daddy came to see me. He was worried about something, said he'd been getting strange phone calls, felt like someone was following him. He asked me to promise him something. What kind of promise? Billy walked to a closet and pulled out an old wooden box. Michael recognized it immediately. His father had made it in high school shop class. The initials MJ were carved into the lid. He asked me to keep this safe, Billy said, holding the box carefully. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to you when you turn 60. He said by then, you'd be wise enough to understand what it all means. Michael stared at the box, his hands shaking. After 31 years, he was finally going to learn what his father had left for him. Billy, he said quietly, what's in there? Billy set the box on the coffee table between them. Letters, son. Dozens of them. Your daddy spent months writing letters to you for every important moment in your life. Letters for your championships, your wedding, when you became a father, when you retired from basketball. Michael's heart was pounding. He wrote me letters. He wanted to make sure you'd always have his guidance, even if he couldn't be there to give it. He knew something might happen to him, Michael. He felt it in his bones. Billy's voice dropped to a whisper. And there's one more letter in there, one that explains everything about the night he died. Michael stared at the wooden box, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands trembled as he reached for the lid, then stopped. "Billy, I need to know something first. Why didn't you give this to me at the funeral? Why did you wait so long?" Billy sat down heavily in his rocking chair, suddenly looking every one of his 78 years. "Because I was scared, son. Your daddy didn't just give me this box. He told me things that night. Things that made my blood run cold." Billy's voice dropped to almost a whisper. 3 weeks before he died, your daddy came to my house around midnight. I never seen him so worried. He was looking over his shoulder, checking the windows, acting like someone might be watching. Michael felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "What did he tell you?" "He said he'd been getting phone calls at home, people hanging up when he answered, cars following him to work and back. He thought someone was trying to scare him." Billy stood up and walked to his kitchen window, peeking through the curtains like he was still worried about being watched. "But it wasn't just the phone calls, Michael. Your daddy had discovered something. Something bad." "What kind of something?" Billy returned to his chair and leaned forward. There was a car theft ring operating in Wilmington. Expensive cars were getting stolen and disappearing. The police couldn't figure out how the thieves were getting away with it so easy. Michael nodded, remembering news stories from the early 1990s about car thefts in eastern North Carolina. "Your daddy worked at Johnson's Auto Shop on Market Street. One day, a man brought in a car for repairs. Something about the car didn't look right to your daddy. The serial numbers had been scratched off. The paint job looked fresh. The interior was torn up like someone had ripped it apart looking for something." Billy paused, his hands shaking slightly. James started paying attention. Over the next few weeks, 3 more cars came in with the same problems. All expensive cars, all with signs that they'd been stolen. "Did Dad call the police?" "He tried. But when he called the Wilmington Police Department, they told him they'd look into it. Nothing happened. Days went by, then weeks. The stolen cars kept coming to the shop." Billy got up and poured himself a glass of water, his hands still trembling. "Then, your daddy got a call from Detective Ray Morrison. Ray was with the State Bureau of Investigation. He'd been tracking the car theft ring for months. He told James that someone in the local police department might be involved." Michael felt his stomach drop. Someone was helping the car thieves. That's what Detective Morrison thought. He asked your daddy to help him catch them. He wanted James to take pictures of the stolen cars, write down license plate numbers, document everything he saw. Billy sat back down and looked directly at Michael. "Your daddy agreed to help. He said it was the right thing to do, but he was scared, Michael. He knew that if the wrong people found out he was working with the police, bad things could happen." "Is that why he gave you the box?" "Yes. He brought it to me that night 3 weeks before he died. He said he had a feeling something might happen to him. He'd been having dreams about danger, feeling like time was running out." Billy reached over and touched the wooden box gently. "He spent 2 months writing those letters, son. Every night after work, he'd come to my house and sit at my kitchen table, writing. He said he wanted to make sure you'd always have his guidance, even if he couldn't be there to give it." "What did the letters say?" "I don't know. He sealed each one in its own envelope, but I watched him write them. Sometimes he'd cry while he was writing. Sometimes he'd smile. He put his whole heart into those letters." Billy's voice broke with emotion. "He told me that if anything happened to him, I should keep the box safe until you turned 60. He said by then, you'd be old enough and wise enough to handle whatever was inside." Michael reached for the box again, then stopped. "Billy, what happened the night Dad died?" Billy took a deep breath. "Detective Morrison had called your daddy that day. He said they were close to catching the car thieves. He wanted to meet with James that night to go over the evidence they'd collected." "Where were they supposed to meet?" "At a rest stop on Highway 74, halfway between Wilmington and Charlotte. Morrison said it would be safer to meet away from town, where nobody would see them together." Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. "Highway 74 was where his father's body had been found. Your daddy called me before he left that night. He was nervous, but he said he had to do the right thing. He said he couldn't live with himself if he didn't help catch the people who were stealing cars from hardworking families." Billy wiped his own eyes with a handkerchief. That was the last time I talked to him, Michael. The next morning, I heard on the radio that James Jordan had been murdered at a rest stop. They said it was a carjacking gone wrong, but you don't think it was random. Billy shook his head firmly. I think someone found out about the meeting with Detective Morrison. I think they followed your daddy to that rest stop. I think they killed him to keep him quiet. Michael felt sick to his stomach. His father hadn't died in a random crime. He'd been murdered because he was trying to do the right thing. What happened to Detective Morrison? Billy's face grew dark. Ray Morrison died in a car accident 2 weeks later, lost control of his vehicle on a rainy night, crashed into a tree. But I always wondered if it was really an accident. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an old clock on Billy's mantelpiece. Michael stared at the wooden box, knowing that inside were letters from his father, but also dreading what the final letter might reveal. Billy, why didn't you tell the police about all this? I tried, son. I called the Wilmington Police Department the day after your daddy's funeral. I told them about the car theft ring, about Detective Morrison, about everything James had told me. What did they say? They said they'd look into it, but nothing happened. A few days later, I got a phone call at 3 in the morning. A man's voice said I should keep my mouth shut if I knew what was good for me. Billy stood up and walked to his front door, checking the lock. That's when I decided to disappear. I was scared, Michael. Scared they'd kill me too. So I moved away, changed my phone number, kept to myself for 31 years. Michael felt anger building in his chest. His father had been murdered, and the people responsible had never been caught. Worse, they'd scared Billy into silence. But why are you coming forward now? Billy smiled sadly. Because I'm old, son. I'm 78 years old. And my heart isn't good. I can't take this secret to my grave. Your daddy deserves justice, and you deserve to know the truth. Billy pointed to the wooden box. Everything you need to know is in there. The names of the people your daddy suspected, the evidence he collected, the story of what really happened. That night, Michael's hands shook as he finally lifted the lid of the box. Inside were dozens of envelopes, each one marked with a different occasion. For Michael's first championship, for Michael's wedding day, for when Michael becomes a father, for Michael's first retirement, for Michael's second retirement, and many others. At the bottom of the box was a larger envelope marked for Michael's 60th birthday, the truth about July 23, 1993. Michael picked up the first letter, dated March 15, 1993. My dearest son Michael, if you're reading this, then I'm not there to tell you these things myself. I want you to know that watching you play basketball has been the greatest joy of my life. When you scored 63 points against the Celtics in the playoffs, I cried like a baby. Not because you scored so much, but because I saw the man you were. Becoming determined, fearless, never willing to give up. That's the Jordan way, son. That's what your great-grandfather taught me, and what I tried to teach you. Michael's vision blurred with tears. His father's handwriting was exactly as he remembered, a careful, neat, full of love. Billy put a gentle hand on Michael's shoulder. Take your time, son. Those letters have been waiting 31 years for you to read them. They're not going anywhere. Michael looked up at Billy, this man who had carried such a heavy burden for so long. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for keeping your promise to Dad. I loved your daddy like a brother. Billy said, this was the least I could do. Michael picked up the envelope marked the truth about July 23, 1993 and held it in his hands. After 31 years, he was finally going to learn what really happened the night his father died. But as he prepared to open it, he realized that learning the truth would change everything. Once he knew who killed his father and why, there would be no going back. He would have to decide what to do with that knowledge. Billy, he said quietly, are you ready for what might happen when I read this? Billy nodded firmly. I've been ready. For 31 years, son. Your daddy died trying to do the right thing. It's time the world knew that. Michael's hands trembled as he opened the envelope marked the truth about July 23, 1993. Inside was a letter written in his father's careful handwriting, dated July 21, 1993, and just 2 days before James Jordan died. My dearest son Michael, the letter began, If you are reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I am writing this letter because I believe my life is in danger. And I want you to know the truth about what happened to me. Michael's heart pounded as he continued reading. For the past 2 months, I have been helping Detective Ray Morrison investigate a car theft ring here in Wilmington. What started as me reporting suspicious cars at the auto shop has become something much bigger and more dangerous than I ever imagined. Billy moved his chair closer to Michael so he could read along. Ray discovered that the car theft ring was not just stealing cars, they were using those cars to transport drugs from Florida to New York. The stolen cars would be loaded with drugs, driven north, then abandoned or sold. It was the perfect crime because if the police found the drugs, they would blame whoever had stolen the car, not the real criminals. Michael looked up at Billy. Dad was investigating drug dealers. Keep reading, son. It gets worse. Michael continued with his father's letter, but the most shocking discovery was who was behind the operation. Ray found evidence that Lieutenant Marcus Webb of the Wilmington Police Department was the leader of the whole ring. Webb was using his position to protect the operation. When stolen cars were reported, Webb would make sure the reports disappeared. When other officers got too close to the truth, Webb would transfer them or get them fired. Michael felt sick. A police lieutenant had been running a criminal operation, and his father had gotten caught in the middle of it. Ray and I collected evidence for weeks. We took photographs of the stolen cars. We documented license plate numbers. We recorded conversations. We had enough evidence to send Webb and his partners to prison for life. The letter continued in his father's neat handwriting, but someone found out what we were doing. Last week, I started getting phone calls at home, cars following me to work. Yesterday, a man approached me at the gas station and told me I should mind my own business if I knew what was good for my family. Michael's blood ran cold. Someone had threatened his father, had threatened their family. Ray wanted to call off the investigation. He said it was too dangerous, but I couldn't do it. Michael, these criminals were stealing cars from hardworking people, selling drugs that were destroying families. I had to do what was right, even if it meant putting myself at risk. Billy pointed to the next paragraph. This is the part that broke my heart. I know that helping Ray might cost me my life, but I also know that I raised you to always do the right thing. No matter how hard it might be, I cannot teach you to have courage and then show cowardice myself. If something happens to me, I want you to know that I died trying to protect our community. Michael wiped tears from his eyes as he continued reading. Tomorrow night, July 22nd, Ray and I are meeting at the rest stop on Highway 70 to finalize our evidence. We plan to turn everything over to the FBI on July 24th. Ray says the FBI has been investigating police corruption in eastern North Carolina, and our evidence will help them build their case. Michael's hands shook as he read the next lines. You are reading this letter, then something went wrong at that meeting. I want you to know that I was not the victim of a random crime. I was murdered by people who wanted to stop me from exposing the truth. Billy squeezed Michael's shoulder. Your daddy knew exactly what he was walking into. The letter continued. In this box, you will find copies of all the evidence Ray and I collected. Photographs of stolen cars, license plate numbers, names of people involved in the operation, a list of police officers who Webb was paying to keep quiet. Everything you need to make sure these criminals face justice. Michael looked in the box and found a manila envelope marked evidence. Inside were dozens of photographs showing cars with scratched-off serial numbers, handwritten notes with names and dates, and photocopies of police reports that had been marked case closed when they should have been investigated further. But Michael, the letter continued, I need you to promise me something. Do not try to get revenge. Do not let anger and hatred consume your heart. Instead, use this evidence to make sure justice is served through the proper legal system. Contact the FBI. Work with honest police officers. Do this the right way, the way I taught you to handle problems, with intelligence, patience, and determination. Michael found another envelope marked FBI contact information. Inside was a business card for FBI agents Sarah Chen in Charlotte, along with a note in his father's handwriting. Agent Chen is investigating police corruption in North Carolina. Ray Morrison said she can be trusted. The letter was nearly finished. I Want you to know that I am not afraid to die if it means protecting the people I love. My greatest fear has never been death, it has been the thought that I might not live to see you achieve all the great things I know you will accomplish. But I have already seen enough to make me the proudest father in the world. I have watched you grow from a determined little boy shooting baskets in our backyard into a man who never gives up, who treats people with respect, who remembers where he came from. You are everything I dreamed you would become. Michael could barely see through his tears as he read the final paragraph. If I die tomorrow night, know that my last thoughts will be of you and our family. Know that I lived long enough to see my son become a champion, not just in basketball, but in life. Know that I died trying to do what I taught you to do, stand up for what is right, even when it is dangerous. I love you more than basketball, more than life itself. Make me proud, son, but more importantly, make yourself proud. Your father always, James or Jordan. Michael set the letter down and buried his face in his hands. For 31 years, he had believed his father died in a random carjacking. Now he knew the truth. James Jordan had been murdered by corrupt police officers because he was trying to protect his community. Billy handed Michael a tissue and waited quietly while he processed everything he had just learned. There's more in the envelope, Billy said gently. Michael found a second sheet of paper, a list of names written in his father's handwriting. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, leader of Operation, Officer Donald Price Webb, S. partner, Officer Kenneth Hayes, provided protection, Tommy Richardson, local drug dealer Carlos Martinez, car theft specialist Jerome Williams, transport coordinator. Next to each name, his father had written notes about their role in the criminal operation. Your daddy was thorough, Billy said. He documented everything. Michael found one more item in the envelope, a small tape recorder with a cassette tape inside. What's this? Your daddy recorded some conversations. He wore a wire during his last meeting with Ray Morrison. He wanted to make sure there was proof of everything they discussed. Michael stared at the tape recorder. His father's voice was on that tape, recorded just days before he died. Billy, did anyone else know about this evidence? Just me and your daddy, and Detective Morrison. But he died 2 weeks later. What happened to the people on this list? Were they ever arrested? Billy shook his head sadly. Lieutenant Webb retired quietly 6 months after your daddy died. Moved to Florida. The others scattered to different jobs, different cities. As far as I know, none of them ever faced justice. Michael felt anger building in his chest. The people who killed his father had gotten away with it. They had lived free lives while his family grieved for 31 years. But they're all still alive, Billy continued. I checked on the internet at the library. Webb is living in Tampa. Price owns a security company in Raleigh. Hayes works for a private investigation firm in Virginia. Michael looked at all the evidence spread across Billy's coffee table. After 3 decades, he finally had the tools to get justice for his father. But he also understood the weight of what that would mean. Billy, if I take this to the FBI, if I try to reopen this case, these people might come after me. They might come after my family. Billy met his eyes steadily. That's possible, son. But your daddy faced the same choice 31 years ago. He chose to do what was right, even though it was dangerous. Michael picked up his father's letter and read the final lines again. Stand up for what is right, even when it is dangerous. What do you think I should do? Billy smiled for the first time since Michael had arrived. I think you should do exactly what your daddy would do. I think you should make sure these criminals finally face justice. And I think you should do it the smart way, with the FBI, with lawyers, with the full power of the legal system behind you. Michael carefully placed all the evidence back in the envelope. After 31 years of wondering, he finally knew the truth about his father's death. Now he had to decide what to do with that truth. But first, he wanted to read some of the other letters his father had written for him. Letters for his championships, his wedding, the birth of his children. Letters that would help him understand not just how his father died, but how much his father had loved him while he lived. Michael picked up the envelope marked for Michael's first championship, 1991. His hand still shook as he opened it, but now it was from anticipation rather than fear. My son, the letter began, by the time you read this, you will have won your first NBA championship. I wish I could have been there to see it happen. But I know in my heart that you did it with the same determination you showed as a little boy. In our backyard, Michael remembered that championship clearly, beating Magic Johnson and the Lakers, finally reaching the mountaintop after years of playoff disappointments. His father had been there, sitting in the stands, crying with joy. I want you to know that when you were 10 years old, shooting baskets until it was too dark to see, I knew this day would come. You never gave up, even when the bigger kids said you were too small. You kept practicing when other kids went inside to watch television. That's when I knew you had something special inside you. Billy watched quietly as Michael read, occasionally nodding as if he remembered James writing these exact words. But Michael, I hope this championship is not just about basketball for you. I hope it's about proving to yourself that the Jordan family never quits. Your great-grandfather worked in cotton fields but never stopped dreaming of something better. Your grandfather built his own business with his bare hands. You are carrying on a family tradition of refusing to accept limits. Michael looked up at Billy. He mentions my great-grandfather. Did Dad ever talk to you about family history? All the time, Billy said. Your daddy spent years researching your family's past. He was working on something special for you. Michael continued reading the championship letter. This trophy belongs not just to you, but to every Jordan who came before you and every Jordan who will come after you. We are a family of fighters. Son, remember that when the next challenge comes. Michael set that letter aside and picked up another one marked for Michael's wedding day. Inside, his father had written advice about marriage, about being a good husband, about balancing career and family. Marriage is not about finding someone who makes you happy, James had written. It's about becoming someone who makes others happy. Treat your wife the way you want your children to treat their spouses someday. Letter after letter revealed his father's wisdom, his love, his hopes for Michael's future. There was a letter for the birth of each of his children, filled with specific advice about being a father. For when Jeffrey is born contained this passage. The day you become a father, you will understand how much I love you. You will hold that baby and realize that you would do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect him. That's how I feel about you every single day. Michael wiped tears from his eyes as he read letter after letter. His father had thought of everything. Letters for his retirements from basketball, letters for business successes, even letters for difficult times. One envelope was marked for when you doubt yourself. Inside, James had written, there will be days when you wonder if you're good enough, smart enough, strong enough. On those days, remember that you come from people who survived slavery, who built businesses from nothing, who never accepted failure as final. Doubt is just fear wearing a disguise. Face it the same way you face a tough opponent, with preparation, confidence, and the knowledge that you belong exactly where you are. But the most surprising discovery came when Michael found an envelope he hadn't noticed before, one that was thicker than the others and marked Family History Project for Michael's children. What's this one? Michael asked. Billy smiled mysteriously. Your daddy spent 2 years working on that. He said he wanted to make sure your children knew where they came from. Inside the envelope were dozens of pages of handwritten notes, photocopied documents, and family photographs going back generations. Michael gasped as he realized what he was looking at, a complete family tree dating back to the 1800s. Your daddy traced your family all the way back to your great-great-grandmother, Billy explained. He drove all over North Carolina, visiting courthouses, talking to elderly relatives, collecting stories. Michael found a page titled The Story of Sarah Jordan, born 1847, died 1924. Below it was a photograph of a strong-faced woman standing in front of a wooden house. Sarah Jordan was your great-great-grandmother, Billy said. According to your daddy's research, she was born into slavery but became a landowner after the Civil War. She bought 40 acres of land in South Carolina and built a house with her own hands. Michael stared at the photograph. Sarah Jordan had eyes that reminded him of his father, determined, intelligent, full of quiet strength. Your daddy found the deed to that land, Billy continued. It's still in your family's name. Sarah left it to her children, and it's been passed down through the generations. We still own land in South Carolina. Billy nodded and pulled out another envelope from the bottom of the box. Your daddy was planning to take you there for your 30th birthday. He wanted it to be a surprise. Inside the envelope was an old deed showing Sarah Jordan as the owner of 40 acres in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Attached to it was a more recent document showing that James Jordan had been quietly paying property taxes on the land for years. He never told anyone in the family about this, Billy explained. He wanted to restore the property first, turn it into a place where your family could gather and learn about your history. Michael found his father's notes about Sarah Jordan. Sarah Jordan was extraordinary for her time. Born into slavery, she learned to read and write in secret. After the Civil War, she worked as a seamstress and saved every penny until she could buy land. She sent all 4 of her children to school as something almost unheard of for former slaves. She built her house in 1872 when she was 25 years old. Local records show that white men tried to buy her land several times, offering her much more than it was worth. She always refused to sell. She wanted her descendants to have something that could never be taken away from them. Michael discovered that his father had visited the South Carolina property multiple times, taking photographs and documenting its condition. The house was still standing, though it needed significant repairs. Your daddy hired a contractor, Billy said. He was planning to start restoration work in August 1993. He wanted to surprise you with it on your birthday. Michael felt overwhelmed. His father had been planning a future that extended far beyond basketball, far beyond Michael's individual success. He had been building a legacy that would connect the family to their roots for generations to come. But there was more. At the bottom of the family history envelope, Michael found something that took his breath away, the letter addressed not to him, but to his children, for Jeffrey, Marcus, and Jasmine Jordan. From your grandfather James, he wrote letters to my children. He wrote letters to children who weren't even born yet, Billy said with amazement. He said he wanted to make sure they understood their heritage, no matter what happened to him. Michael opened the letter addressed to his children. My dear grandchildren, if you are reading this, then your father has decided to share our family's history with you. I want you to know that you are not just Michael Jordan's children, you are the descendants of people who refuse to be broken by the worst circumstances imaginable. Your great-great-great-grandmother Sarah Jordan was born into slavery but died as a landowner and businesswoman. She built a house that still stands today. She sent her children to college when most black children couldn't even learn to read. She was a pioneer. And her strength runs in your blood. The letter continued, with specific stories about family members, their struggles and triumphs, their contributions to their communities. But I also want you to understand that with privilege comes responsibility. Your father's success has opened doors that were closed to previous generations of our family. Use those opportunities to lift up others. Use your advantages to help people who look like us, who face the same challenges our ancestors faced. Michael realized that his father hadn't just been writing letters, he had been crafting a comprehensive plan for preserving and continuing the family legacy. Billy, there's something I need to know. Did Dad ever mention why he waited until I was 60 to share all of this? Billy nodded slowly. He said that by 60, you'd understand the difference between success and significance. He said you'd be old enough to appreciate where you came from and wise enough to decide what to do with the family's future. Michael looked around Billy's living room at all the evidence of his father's love and planning. Letters for every major life event, family history going back generations, property that had been secretly preserved for decades. A complete blueprint for understanding the Jordan family legacy. There's one more thing, Billy said quietly. Your daddy didn't just research your family history. He also set up something to help other families. Billy walked to his bedroom and returned with a folder marked the Sarah Jordan Foundation. Your daddy established a foundation 2 years before he died. He'd been funding it secretly, helping kids from poor families get scholarships for college. He named it after your great-great-grandmother. Michael opened the folder and found bank statements, scholarship records, and letters from students who had received help from the foundation. He never told anyone about this, Billy continued. He just quietly helped kids who reminded him of himself, kids with dreams but no money to make them come true. Michael stared at the foundation documents. His father had been building something that would last long after basketball trophies were forgotten. The foundation is still operating, Billy said. A lawyer in Charleston has been managing it all these years, using money your daddy set aside. But it's been waiting for someone to take it over and expand it. Michael realized that everything his father had left him, the letters, the family history, the land, the foundation, was connected. It was all part of a larger vision for what the Jordan family could become. Billy, he said quietly, I think I understand now why Dad wanted me to wait until I was 60. Why is that, son? Because at 60, I'm not thinking about what I can achieve for myself anymore. I'm thinking about what I can build for my children and grandchildren. I'm thinking about legacy. Billy smiled and nodded. That's exactly what your daddy hoped you'd say. Michael was carefully placing the letters back in the wooden box when his fingers touched something he hadn't noticed before. At the very bottom, beneath all the other envelopes, was a small cloth bag tied with string. Billy, what's this? Michael asked, holding up the bag. Billy's eyes widened. I never saw that before, son. Your daddy must have hidden it under everything else. Michael untied the string and opened the bag. Inside was an old brass key and a folded piece of paper. The paper had an address written in his father's handwriting, Wilmington Self-Storage. Unit 247, Market Street. A storage unit. Michael looked at Billy in confusion. Billy shook his head. Your daddy never mentioned any storage unit to me, but that address is only about 10 minutes from here. Michael unfolded the paper completely and found a short note from his father. Michael, if you have found this key, then you have read all my letters and learned about our family's history. But there is one more secret I could not share with anyone, not even Billy. This secret is for you alone, and you must decide what to do with it. The storage unit contains the final piece of the Jordan family story. Your father Michael's heart started racing again. After everything he had already discovered, there was still more. Billy, did Dad ever mention renting a storage unit? Never, son. But your daddy was good at keeping secrets when he needed to. Michael stood up, pacing around Billy's small living room. I have to go see what's in there. Right now. I can't wait another minute. I've been waiting 31 years for answers. I need to know everything. Billy grabbed his jacket. Then I'm coming with you. Your daddy trusted me to help you through this, and I'm not stopping now. 20 minutes later, they were standing outside Wilmington Self-Storage, a long row of metal buildings on Market Street. The facility looked like it had been there for decades. Michael found Unit 247 in the back row. His hands shook as he inserted the brass key into the lock. It turned easily, as if it had been used recently. Michael rolled up the metal door and gasped at what he saw inside. The storage unit was filled with boxes, but not just any boxes. These were bankers' boxes, labeled and organized, stacked neatly from floor to ceiling. Each box had a label written in his father's careful handwriting, Family Research 1850 to 1900. Property documents, business records, correspondence, and dozens of others. But what caught Michael's attention immediately was a large wooden desk in the center of the unit, with papers spread across its surface as if someone had been working there recently. My God, Billy whispered. How long was your daddy coming here? Michael walked to the desk and found a calendar from 1993. Several dates were circled in red ink, including July 23rd, the day his father died. On the desk was an open folder labeled The Complete Truth. Inside were documents that made Michael's knees buckle. The first document was a birth certificate from 1847 for Sarah Jordan, but it wasn't just any birth certificate. It showed that Sarah Jordan's father was listed as Thomas Whitman, a white plantation owner, and her mother as Mary Jordan, a slave woman. Billy, look at this, Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. Billy read over his shoulder. Your great-great-grandmother was mixed race. But there was more, much more. Michael found deed records showing that when Thomas Whitman died in 1869, he had left land to Sarah Jordan in his will, something almost unheard of for a white man to do. For the child of a slave, 40 acres in Beaufort County, South Carolina. Michael read aloud. left to Sarah Jordan, acknowledged daughter of Thomas Whitman. The next document was even more shocking. It was a letter written by Thomas Whitman to his lawyer in 1868, 1 year before he died. "I am writing to ensure that my daughter Sarah receives what is rightfully hers. Though the law and society may not recognize her as my child, I know in my heart that she is. She has shown more intelligence, determination, and character than any of my legitimate heirs. The land I am leaving her is not charity, it is inheritance." Michael sat down heavily in the desk chair his father had used. Dad knew all of this. Billy was reading another document. "Michael, there's more. Your daddy found records showing that Sarah Jordan wasn't the only mixed-race child Thomas Whitman acknowledged. He left property to 3 different children he had with slave women." Michael discovered that his father had spent years researching not just Sarah Jordan, but the entire Whitman family. Thomas Whitman had been one of the wealthiest plantation owners in South Carolina. But he had also been what the documents called unusual for his time in his treatment of slaves and his mixed-race children. In a folder labeled Modern Research, Michael found something that stopped him cold. His father had hired a private investigator in 1992 to research the current Whitman family holdings. The report showed that the Whitman plantation had eventually become a large agricultural corporation, worth millions of dollars. But here was the shocking part. According to the investigator's research, Sarah Jordan and her descendants had a legal claim to a portion of the Whitman estate. "Billy, are you reading this?" "I'm trying to, son, but I don't understand all these legal terms." Michael found a letter his father had written to a lawyer in Charleston, dated just 1 week before he died. "Dear Mr. Chen, thank you for reviewing the documents I provided regarding the Whitman estate. I understand your opinion that Sarah Jordan's descendants may have a valid claim to a portion of the family holdings, given that her inheritance was improperly seized by other family members after her death in 1924. However, I want to be very clear that I am not interested in pursuing this claim for financial reasons. My son Michael has been blessed with success beyond our family's wildest dreams. We do not need money. But I am interested in the historical truth. If Sarah Jordan was cheated out of her inheritance, then that injustice should be acknowledged. I would like to explore the possibility of recovering the land itself, not for its monetary value, but for its historical significance to our family." Michael found the lawyer's response, dated July 20, 1993, just 3 days before his father died. "Dear Mr. Jordan, I have completed my preliminary research into the Whitman estate records. I believe your family does indeed have a strong legal claim to approximately 200 acres of the original plantation land, plus accumulated interest over the past century. The current value of this claim could be substantial, possibly in the millions of dollars. I strongly encourage you to meet with me next week to discuss how to proceed. This could be a landmark case in post-Civil War inheritance law." Michael's hands were shaking as he read the final paragraph. "However, I must warn you that pursuing this claim will likely generate significant publicity and possibly resistance from the current Whitman and Family Holdings Company. You should be prepared for a lengthy legal battle." Billy whistled low. "Your daddy was sitting on $1 million lawsuit." Michael kept reading through the files. His father had documented everything: genealogy records proving the family connection, property deeds showing the original inheritance, legal precedents for similar cases, and detailed research into the current owners of the Whitman land. But in another folder, Michael found something that explained why his father had never pursued the claim. It was a handwritten note from James, dated July 22, 1993, the night before he died. "I have spent months researching our family's connection to the Whitman plantation. The evidence is clear that Sarah Jordan was cheated out of her inheritance, and that Michael could rightfully claim millions of dollars through the courts. But I have decided not to pursue this claim, for several reasons. First, Michael has achieved success through his own hard work and talent. He doesn't need inherited wealth to validate his accomplishments. Second, a legal battle over slave-era inheritance would generate enormous publicity that could overshadow Michael's athletic achievements and business ventures. Third, I fear that challenging powerful white families over Civil War-era property rights could put our family in danger." Michael felt a chill run down his spine as he read the final reason. I have already attracted and wanted attention through my involvement in the car theft investigation. I cannot risk making our family a target in another controversial situation. However, I am preserving all this research for Michael to review when he is older and wiser. At age 60, he will be able to make his own decision about whether to pursue our family's rightful inheritance. If he chooses to pursue it, he will have all the evidence he needs. If he chooses not to, at least he will know the complete truth about where he came from. Billy sat down on a storage crate, looking overwhelmed. Your daddy was protecting you, Michael. He knew this information could bring trouble. Michael found one final document that made everything clear. It was a report from the private investigator showing that the current owners of the Whitman plantation were part of a large agricultural corporation with political connections throughout South Carolina. The report noted, the Whitman Holdings Corporation has successfully defended against inheritance claims in the past through aggressive legal tactics and political influence. Any challenge to their land holdings would likely face significant resistance. Michael understood now why his father had kept this secret even from Billy. James Jordan had discovered that his family was entitled to millions of dollars in inherited land. But he had also realized that claiming it could put them in danger. So what are you going to do, son? Billy asked quietly. Michael looked around the storage unit at 30 years of his father's research, boxes and boxes of family history, legal documents, and evidence of injustices that had never been corrected. I don't know, Billy. Dad was right, I don't need the money. But what? But Sarah Jordan deserved better. She built something with her own hands. And it was stolen from her family after she died. That's not right. Michael picked up a photograph of Sarah Jordan standing in front of her house in 1900. She looked proud and strong, a woman who had refused to accept the limitations society had placed on her. Maybe the question isn't whether I need the money, Michael said slowly. Maybe the question is whether I have a responsibility to finish what she started. Billy nodded. Your daddy would be proud of you for thinking about it that way. Michael carefully placed all the documents back in their folders. He would need time to process everything he had learned, time to decide what to do with this incredible family legacy. But as they prepared to leave the storage unit, Michael found one last surprise. Taped to the inside of the door was an envelope marked for Michael, play this last. Inside was a small cassette tape and a note. My final message to you, recorded the night before I died. I pray you will never need to hear this, but if you do, know that everything I did was out of love for you and our family. Hear this, but if you do, know that everything I did was out of love for you and our family. Michael stared at the cassette tape in his trembling hands. This was his father's voice, recorded just hours before James Jordan was murdered. After 31 years of silence, he was about to hear his father speak to him one final time. Billy, I need to hear this right now. Billy nodded and pulled an old portable cassette player from one of the storage boxes. Your daddy left this here too. I think he planned for everything. They sat on storage crates in the dim light of the storage unit. Michael inserted the tape with shaking fingers and pressed play. His father's voice filled the small space. Clear and strong. Hello, Michael. If you're hearing this recording, then my fears have come true, and I am no longer with you. Today is July 22nd, 1993. Tomorrow night, I am meeting with Detective Morrison to finalize our evidence against the car theft ring. I have a feeling I may not survive that meeting. Michael closed his eyes, hearing his father's voice for the first time in over 3 decades. I want you to know that I am not afraid of dying. What scares me is the thought of leaving you without all the guidance I wanted to give you. That's why I wrote all those letters, son. That's why I spent so much time researching our family history. James paused on the recording, and Michael could hear him take a deep breath. By now, you have learned the truth about how I died. You know that I was murdered because I tried to do the right thing. I hope this knowledge doesn't fill you with hatred, Michael. Hatred is poison that hurts the person carrying it more than anyone else. Billy reached over and squeezed Michael's shoulder as they listened. You have also learned about our family's History about Sarah Jordan, about the land in South Carolina, about the inheritance that was stolen from our family. I discovered all of this just months before my death. And I have wrestled with what to do about it. Michael leaned forward, hanging on every word. The lawyers tell me we could claim millions of dollars through the courts. The evidence is strong. Sarah Jordan's descendants were cheated out of their rightful inheritance when powerful white families seized her land after she died. But I have decided not to pursue this claim, for now, not because we don't deserve it, we absolutely do, but because I believe it would put our family in danger. James's voice grew more emotional. I have already seen what happens when you challenge powerful people who profit from injustice. They threaten you, they follow you, they try to silence you. I cannot risk exposing you and your mother and your siblings to that kind of danger. Michael felt tears streaming down his face as his father continued, but I am preserving all the evidence for you to decide what to do when you are older. When you are 60 years old, you will have the wisdom to understand the full weight of this decision. If you choose to pursue our family's rightful inheritance, you will have everything you need to win. But you will also face enemies who have millions of dollars to lose and the political power to fight back. James paused again, and when he spoke next, his voice was filled with love. I need you to promise me something, son. Whatever you decide about the inheritance, whatever you decide about my murder, do not let anger guide your choices. You are better than that. Our family is better than that. If you choose to fight for justice, do it with intelligence and patience. Work within the legal system. Build coalitions of support. Use your success and influence to protect yourself and others. Michael wiped his eyes, amazed by his father's wisdom even in the face of death. But Michael, I also want you to know that you don't have to fight these battles if you don't want to. You have already achieved more than any Jordan in our family's history. You have made us proud beyond measure. If you decide that pursuing the inheritance or my murder case would risk the safety and happiness of your children, then let it go. Sarah Jordan built her legacy through her descendants' success, not through land ownership. You have already fulfilled her dreams in ways she never could have imagined. Billy was crying now too, remembering his friend's courage and wisdom. I want to tell you about the night you scored 63 points against the Celtics, James continued on the tape. I was there in the stands, and when you made that last shot, I looked around at all those people cheering for you, black people, white people, young people, old people, and I realized something. You had done something I never thought possible. You had made people forget about race, forget about their differences, and just appreciate greatness. In that moment, you were not a black basketball player or a white basketball player. You were just the best basketball player in the world. Michael remembered that game, remembered seeing his father in the crowd, but he had never known how deeply it had affected James. That's when I knew you were destined for something bigger than basketball, son. You have the power to bring people together, to inspire them to be better than they thought they could be. That's a gift that goes far beyond anything we could inherit. From old plantation land, James's voice grew stronger as he continued. So if you do decide to pursue our family's legal claims, don't do it just for money or revenge. Do it because you believe it will make the world more just, more fair for other families who have been cheated out of their inheritance. And if you decide not to pursue these claims, use your influence to help people in other ways. Build schools, create scholarships, invest in communities that remind you of where we came from. The recording continued with James sharing specific memories of Michael's childhood, stories about teaching him to drive, advice about being a father, and expressions of love that Michael had never heard before. I want you to know that every choice I made as your father was guided by one simple principle. I wanted to raise a son who would make the world better, not just more successful. You have already done that, Michael. You have already made me prouder than any father has a right to be. Everything else, the inheritance, the justice for my murder, the family legacy, of those are just details. As the recording neared its end, James's voice became softer, more intimate. I wish I could be there to see you become a grandfather, too. Watch you teach your grandchildren to shoot baskets the way I taught you. But I know that even if I'm not there physically, the lessons I tried to teach you will live on through them. Love your family more than you love success. Treat people with respect regardless of their station in life. Stand up for what is right, even when it's difficult. And never, ever forget where you came from. I love you, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. I loved you when you were a skinny kid who couldn't make his high school basketball team. I loved you when you became the greatest basketball player in the world. And I will love you long after my voice stops speaking on this tape. The recording ended with James saying, "Now go make your old man proud, son. But more importantly, make yourself proud." Michael and Billy sat in silence for several minutes after the tape stopped playing. The storage unit felt sacred now, filled with the presence of a man who had loved his family enough to face death rather than compromise his principles. "Billy," Michael finally said, "I think I understand now what Dad wanted me to learn from all of this." "What's that, son?" "It's not about the money or the land or even getting justice for his murder. It's about choosing what kind of man I want to be when facing impossible decisions." Billy nodded slowly. "Your daddy knew you'd figure that out. He always said you were the smartest of his children, not just the most talented." Michael stood up and looked around the storage unit one final time. 31 years of his father's love, research, and planning surrounded him. Letters for every major life event, evidence of historical injustices, proof of criminal conspiracies, a roadmap for restoring the family's rightful inheritance. But most importantly, he had his father's final gift, the wisdom to choose justice over revenge, progress over profit, and love over hatred. "I know what I need to do," Michael said quietly. "What's that?" "I need to go to South Carolina. I need to see Sarah Jordan's house with my own eyes. And then I need to decide not just what my father would want me to do, but what Sarah Jordan would want me to do." Billy smiled. "When do we leave?" "We, son. I've been carrying your daddy's secrets for 31 years. I'm not stopping now. Besides, somebody needs to make sure you don't do anything foolish." Michael laughed for the first time since this whole journey began. "Okay, Billy. Let's go see what our great-great-grandmother built with her own hands." As they locked up the storage unit, Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in decades. He still didn't know what he would do about the inheritance claim or his father's murder case, but he knew that whatever he decided, it would be guided by the same principles that had guided James Jordan and Sarah Jordan before him. He was finally ready to face the most important decision of his life. 2 weeks later, Michael drove through the countryside of Beaufort County, South Carolina, with Billy in the passenger seat and his mother Dolores in the back. He had called his children and asked them to meet him at the property. This was something the whole family needed to see together. The lawyer, William Chen, met them at a small country store near the property entrance. He was a middle-aged Chinese-American man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. "Mr. Jordan, your father contacted me 3 times before he died," Chen said as they shook hands. "He was planning to surprise you with a full restoration of the property for your 30th birthday. He never got the chance," Michael said quietly. "No. But he did extensive research into the property's history. What you're about to see will amaze you." They followed Chen's car down a dirt road lined with massive oak trees. Spanish moss hung from the branches like curtains, creating shadows that danced in the afternoon sunlight. After about a mile, they reached a clearing where an old wooden house stood surrounded by 40 acres of farmland. Michael's breath caught in his throat. The house was more beautiful than he had imagined. Built in the 1870s, it was a modest 2-story structure with a wide front porch and tall windows. The wood was weathered but solid, the roof intact despite decades of neglect. Sarah Jordan built this house herself in 1872, Chen explained as they got out of their cars. She was 25 years old and had just bought the land with money she saved from working as a seamstress. Michael's children arrived shortly after: Jeffrey, Marcus, and Jasmine, along with several of his grandchildren. They gathered on the front porch as Chen told them the story. "Your great-great-grandmother was extraordinary for her time. Born into slavery, she learned to read and write in secret. After the Civil War, she worked 16 hours a day to save money for this land." Little James, Michael's 6-year-old grandson, tugged on his grandfather's pants. "Grandpa Mike, did she really build this whole house by herself?" Michael knelt down to his grandson's level. She did, little man. She built it with her own hands because she wanted her children to have something that could never be taken away from them. Chen unlocked the front door and led them inside. The house was remarkably preserved. Dust cloths covered furniture that looked like it had been placed there decades ago. Sarah's rocking chair sat by the front window. Her dining table, handmade by local craftsmen, dominated the main room. The house has been empty since 1989, Chen explained. The last family member who lived here was Sarah's great-granddaughter, Emma Jordan. When she died, the property passed to your father through the family will, on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. They found a framed photograph of Sarah Jordan. She was standing in front of this very house in 1900, wearing a simple dress and a determined expression. Her eyes held the same intelligent spark that Michael remembered in his father's eyes. She looks like Dad, Jasmine whispered to her brothers. In Sarah's bedroom, they discovered a trunk filled with personal belongings, old quilts she had sewn by hand, tools she had used to build the house, books she had read by candlelight, and, at the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in oilcloth, was Sarah's personal journal. Michael opened it carefully and read the first entry, dated March 1872. Today I signed the papers for my land, 40 acres that belong to me and no one else. The white man at the land office didn't want to sell to me, but I had cash money and the law is the law. My children will inherit more than slavery. They will inherit dignity and hope. He read more entries aloud to his family. June 1872. Started building my house today. People in town say a woman can't do such work, but I've been watching the men build houses for years. It's not magic, it's just planning and hard work. September 1872. I finished the roof today. When it rained last night, I sat inside my own house, on my own land, and cried with joy. No master can take this away from my babies. December 1874. My son William graduated from the colored school today. First Jordan to read and write proper. I worked extra hours for 2 years to pay his school fees, but seeing him read from the Bible made every sacrifice worth it. Dolores Jordan spoke for the first time since they had arrived. Your father brought me here once, Michael. It was 1992, just before he died. He said this house represented everything he wanted our family to remember. What did he mean? Mama, he said Sarah Jordan proved that we don't need anyone's permission to be great. She built her success with her own hands, on her own terms. He wanted you to understand that your achievements came from the same strength she had. Chen led them to the basement, where they found something unexpected, a room that had been converted into a study. The walls were covered with family photographs, dating back generations, and a large family tree painted directly on the wall showed the names of Sarah's descendants. At the bottom of the family tree, someone had recently added names in fresh paint: James R. Jordan and Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Your father painted those names, Chen said quietly. He came here the week before he died and added them to Sarah's family tree. He said he wanted to complete the circle. Michael stared at his name on the wall, painted by his father's hand just days before his murder. The emotional weight of standing in the house his ancestor built, looking at his name painted by his father, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, was overwhelming. Young James tugged on his grandfather's shirt again. Grandpa Mike, are we going to live here? Michael looked around the room at his family. 3 generations of Jordans stood in the house that their ancestor had built with her own hands. This was their heritage, their connection to the past, their foundation for the future. I don't know yet, little man, but we're going to take care of this place. We're going to make sure Sarah's house is here for your children and your children's children. Chen showed them the rest of the property. The barn Sarah had built in 1875. The well she had dug by hand. The fields where she had grown cotton and vegetables to support her family. 40 acres of land that had stayed in the Jordan family for over 150 years. Your father had plans for this place, Chen said as they walked back toward the house. He wanted to restore it and turn it into a family heritage center, a place where your children and grandchildren could come to learn about their history. What would that involve? Michael asked. Complete restoration of the house and barn, creating educational exhibits about Sarah Jordan's life and the history of land ownership after slavery, establishing programs to help other families research their genealogy. Michael found himself thinking about his father's cassette tape recording. James had said that if Michael chose to pursue their inheritance claim, he should do it to make the world more just for other families. Maybe this property could serve that purpose without the legal battle. Chen, what would it cost to restore this place the way Dad wanted? Your father had estimates done, about $2 million for a complete restoration and conversion to a heritage center. Michael's son Marcus stepped forward. Dad, that's nothing compared to what we could claim from the Whitman estate. If we won that lawsuit, we could restore this place and have millions left over. Michael looked at his son, then at Sarah Jordan's photograph on the mantelpiece. What would she want him to do? Fight for money that was rightfully theirs, or build something positive that would help other families? Maybe it's not about the money, Marcus. Maybe it's about finishing what Sarah started. Jasmine pointed to a faded inscription carved into the wooden mantelpiece, built with love for my children and their children. S.J. 1872. She built this for us, Dad. She built it for all of us, even the ones who weren't born yet. As the sun began to set, the family gathered on Sarah's front porch. Michael sat in her rocking chair, looking out over the land she had fought to own, that she had worked to improve, that she had passed down through generations. Billy, he said to his father's old friend, what do you think Dad would want me to do? Billy rocked slowly in the chair next to him. I think your daddy would want you to do whatever would make Sarah Jordan proud. She didn't build this place for money. She built it for love. Michael's mother spoke from her chair near the front door. Your father used to say that every generation has to decide how to honor the ones who came before them. Sarah honored her ancestors by refusing to accept limits. Your father honored Sarah by preserving her legacy. Now it's your turn. Michael looked around at his family, his children, his grandchildren, his mother, and Billy, for generations connected by love, by sacrifice, by the determination to build something lasting. As night fell over Sarah Jordan's 40 acres, Michael began to understand what his father had really left him. Not just evidence of crimes or claims to inherited wealth, but a choice about what kind of legacy he wanted to leave for his own children. The decision was becoming clear. But there was still one more thing he needed to know. In the morning, he would call the FBI and find out what they were willing to do about his father's murder. Justice for James Jordan might be more important than money from old plantation land. But tonight, he would sleep in the house his great-great-great-grandmother built, surrounded by family, dreaming of the future she had made possible. Michael woke up before sunrise in Sarah Jordan's bedroom, lying on a simple bed that Chen had brought in for their overnight stay. The room felt peaceful, filled with the presence of the strong woman who had slept here over a century ago. Through the window, he could see the oak trees Sarah had planted as saplings, now massive and protective over the land she had fought to own. His grandson James was curled up next to him, having insisted on sleeping with Grandpa Mike in the old lady's house. The 6-year-old had been fascinated by Sarah's story, asking questions all evening about how she built the house, how she learned to read, how she saved enough money to buy land. Grandpa, little James whispered as Michael stirred. Are you awake? I'm awake. Little man, did you sleep okay? I had a dream about the old lady. She was young and strong, and she was building the house all by herself. She looked happy. Michael smiled and pulled his grandson closer. I think she was happy. She was building something for her family. For us. Are we going to keep the house, Grandpa? Michael looked around Sarah's bedroom at her simple furniture, her belongings carefully preserved, her spirit still present in every corner. Yes, little man, we're going to keep it, and we're going to make it beautiful again. After breakfast, Michael's family gathered in Sarah's living room to discuss the future. His children sat around the handmade dining table while his mother rocked in Sarah's chair by the window. Billy sat quietly in the corner, listening as for generations of Jordans talked about honoring their ancestors' legacy. Dad, Jeffrey said, I've been thinking about what Mr. Chen said yesterday. $2 million to restore this place is a lot of money, but it's nothing compared to what we could get from the Whitman lawsuit. Marcus nodded in agreement. If we won that case, We could restore this house and still have millions left over. We could help a lot more people with that kind of money, but Jasmine disagreed. I think fighting that lawsuit would miss the point of what Sarah Jordan built here. She didn't want her descendants to spend their lives fighting white families over old injustices. She wanted us to build our own success. Michael listened to his children debate, remembering his father's words from the cassette tape. James had said the decision should be guided by what would make the world more just, not just what would make the Jordan family richer. I've made my decision about the inheritance claim, Michael said quietly. The room fell silent. I'm not going to pursue it. Marcus looked shocked. Dad, we're talking about millions of dollars that rightfully belong to our family. I know, son, but I've been thinking about what Sarah Jordan would want. She built this house because she wanted her family to have something that could never be taken away from them. She didn't spend her life fighting for what was stolen from her. She spent her life building something new. Michael stood up and walked to the family tree painted on the wall. Your grandfather left me a choice. I could fight for money that belongs to us, or I could use my success to build something that would help other families. I choose to build. Dolores Jordan spoke from her rocking chair. What are you planning to do, son? I'm going to restore this house exactly the way Dad wanted. I'm going to turn it into the Sarah Jordan Family Heritage Center, but I'm also going to expand Dad's scholarship foundation. Instead of just helping a few kids each year, I want to help hundreds. Michael's voice grew stronger as he shared his vision. I want this place to be where families come to research their history, to understand where they came from. I want kids who grew up like I did, poor, with big dreams but no money, to get scholarships that change their lives. Little James raised his hand like he was in school. Grandpa Mike, can I help? Michael knelt down to his grandson's level. You can help by learning everything you can about Sarah Jordan, so you can tell your children about her someday. I will, Grandpa. I promise. Chen had been listening quietly from the doorway. Mr. Jordan, there's something else your father wanted you to know about. He didn't just research your family history. He also found other families in this area who lost their land to fraud and theft after the Civil War. What do you mean? Your father documented dozens of cases where black families were cheated out of property they had legally purchased. Most of these families never knew they had legal claims because the paperwork was hidden or destroyed. Chen pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Your father believed that if you chose not to pursue your own inheritance claim, you might want to help these other families pursue theirs, families who don't have your resources or influence. Michael looked through the folder. It contained case after case of families whose land had been stolen through legal tricks, forged documents, and corrupt court decisions. Some of these cases are still winnable, Chen continued. With the right legal support, some of these families could recover land that was stolen from their ancestors generations ago. Michael felt his heart racing. This was exactly what his father had been talking about, using his success to make the world more just for other families. How many families are we talking about? At least 50 in South Carolina alone. Your father believed there might be hundreds across the South. Marcus leaned forward with interest. Dad, this could be huge. We could help these families get back millions of dollars in stolen land. And we could do it without making ourselves targets, Jasmine added. We'd be helping others, not claiming something for ourselves. Michael looked around at his family, all of them excited about the possibility of helping other families recover their stolen heritage. Billy, what do you think Dad would say about this? Billy smiled and nodded slowly. I think your daddy would say this is exactly what Sarah Jordan would want. She fought for her own family's land, but she also helped other freed slaves learn to read and write. She understood that lifting up your community lifts up your family. That afternoon, Michael made the phone call he had been preparing for since he learned the truth about his father's murder. He dialed the number for FBI agent Sarah Chen in Charlotte. Agent Chen, my name is Michael Jordan. I believe you worked with my father, James Jordan, in 1993. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Jordan, I've been waiting for this call for 31 years. You have. Your father was supposed to meet with me on July 24, 1993, the day after he was murdered. He was going to give me evidence about a police corruption ring in Wilmington. When he died, that evidence disappeared. Michael felt his heart pounding. Agent Chen, I have that evidence. Another pause. Mr. Jordan, I need to see you immediately. Can you come to Charlotte tomorrow? I'll be there. After hanging up, Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in decades. He was finally going to get justice for his father's murder. The men who had killed James Jordan were going to face consequences for their crimes. But more importantly, he was going to honor his father's legacy in the way James had always hoped. By building something positive, something that would help other families, something that would last for generations. That evening, as the family prepared to leave Sarah's house, Michael walked through each room one final time. In Sarah's bedroom, he found her journal open to an entry from 1895. Today my grandson asked me why I work so hard to improve this land when I could just live comfortably on what I have already built. I told him that we are not just building for ourselves, we are building for people we will never meet, children who are not yet born, futures we cannot imagine. That is what love looks like when it becomes action. Michael understood now what his father had been trying to teach him. Success wasn't just about individual achievement, it was about using that achievement to create opportunities for others. Legacy wasn't just about preserving the past, it was about building a better future. As they drove away from Sarah's house, little James looked back through the rear window. Grandpa Mike, when will we come back? Soon. Little man, very soon. We're going to make this place beautiful again, and then we're going to invite other families to come learn about their history too. Will you tell them about Sarah Jordan? I'll tell them about Sarah Jordan, and about your great-grandfather James, and about how families can stay strong even when bad things happen to them. Michael looked in his rearview mirror at the house growing smaller in the distance. Tomorrow, he would start the process of getting justice for his father's murder. Next week he would begin restoring Sarah's house. Next month he would launch the expanded scholarship program. But tonight, he was simply a grandfather driving home with his family, carrying forward a legacy of love, determination, and the unshakable belief that every generation has the power to make the world better for the ones who come after them. The Jordan family story would continue, just as Sarah Jordan had always intended when she built her house with her own hands and painted that family tree on the basement wall. Love had become action, and action had become legacy. 6 months later, on what would have been James Jordan's 85th birthday, Michael stood on the restored front porch of Sarah Jordan's house. The Sarah Jordan Family Heritage Center was about to open its doors to the public for the first time. The old house looked exactly as it had in 1900. But now it was equipped with modern technology to help families research their genealogy and learn about their history. Billy Thompson, now 79 and using a walking cane, sat in Sarah's original rocking chair, watching as cars began arriving for the opening ceremony. Families from across the South had come to learn about their heritage, to see what was possible when people refused to give up on their dreams. Your daddy would be so proud, Billy said to Michael as they watched children run across the same yard where Sarah Jordan had worked over a century ago. I hope so, Billy. I really hope so. The months since leaving Sarah's house had been filled with both triumph and heartbreak. The FBI investigation into James Jordan's murder had moved quickly once Michael provided his father's evidence. Agent Sarah Chen had been working the case quietly for decades, waiting for someone to come forward with proof. Michael's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Agent Chen. Mr. Jordan, I have news about your father's case. Can you talk? Michael walked away from the crowd gathering for the ceremony. I'm here. What did you find out? We arrested Marcus Williamson yesterday morning in Tampa, Florida. He's 68 years old now. But DNA evidence confirms he was one of the men who killed your father. Michael felt his knees go weak. After 31 years, his father's killer was finally in custody. During questioning, Williamson confessed to being part of the car theft ring your father was investigating. He also confessed to your father's murder. What did he say exactly? Agent Chen's voice was gentle but firm. He said Lieutenant Webb ordered the hit because your father was going to expose their entire operation. Williamson and another man, Kenneth Hayes, followed your father to the rest stop that night. Michael closed his eyes, finally hearing the complete truth about his father's final moments. "But Mr. Jordan, there's something else Williamson told us. Something I think you need to hear." "What?" "He said your father's last words were about you. Even facing death, your father told them, 'Tell my son I love him and I'm proud of him. Tell him to keep doing the right thing.'" Tears streamed down Michael's face, even in his final moments. James Jordan had been thinking about his son, trying to send him a message of love and guidance. "Agent Chen, what happens now?" "Williamson has agreed to testify against the others in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. We expect to arrest Webb and Hayes within the week. Your father will finally get justice." After hanging up, Michael sat alone on Sarah's front porch for several minutes, processing the news. His father's killers would finally face consequences for their crimes. The car theft ring that had operated with police protection would be exposed. Justice would be served, but more importantly, Michael now knew that his father's final thoughts had been of love, not fear. James Jordan had died as he had lived, thinking about his family, encouraging them to do what was right. Billy appeared beside him, having sensed that something important had happened. "Good news or bad news, son?" "Good news. They caught Dad's killer. He confessed to everything." Billy sat down heavily in his chair, tears in his eyes. 31 years I've been waiting to hear those words. "Billy, the killer said Dad's last words were about me. He told them to tell me he loved me and was proud of me." Billy nodded slowly. "That sounds exactly like something your daddy would say. Even facing death, he was trying to take care of you." The opening ceremony began an hour later. Michael stood before a crowd of over 300 people, of families who had come to learn about their heritage, children who would receive scholarships from the expanded Sarah Jordan Foundation, and community leaders who supported the vision of helping families understand their history. "Today we're not just opening a heritage center," Michael began. "We're continuing a story that began over 150 years ago when a young woman named Sarah Jordan decided that her family deserved better than what society was willing to give them." He pointed to the house behind him. "Sarah Jordan built this house with her own hands because she understood something important. If you want your children to have a better future, you have to build it yourself. You can't wait for someone else to give it to you." Michael looked out at the families gathered on Sarah's land. "My father, James Jordan, understood the same thing. He spent years researching our family history, not because he was interested in the past, but because he wanted future generations to understand where their strength comes from. 3 weeks before he was murdered, my father made a choice. He could have stayed quiet about the crimes he witnessed. He could have protected himself by looking the other way. But he chose to do what was right, even though he knew it might cost him his life." The crowd listened intently as Michael shared the complete story: his father's investigation of the car theft ring, his murder by corrupt police officers, and the 31 years it took to bring his killers to justice. "This morning, the FBI arrested the man who killed my father. After more than 3 decades, James Jordan will finally get justice." The crowd erupted in applause, but Michael wasn't finished. "But justice for my father isn't the most important thing happening here today. The most important thing is what we're building for the future." He gestured toward the restored house. "This heritage center will help hundreds of families research their genealogy and learn about their ancestors. The Sarah Jordan Foundation will provide college scholarships to young people who have big dreams but limited resources, and our legal assistance program will help other families recover land that was stolen from their ancestors." Michael paused, looking directly at the children in the crowd. "But all of this will only matter if you carry the story forward. If you remember that every generation has the power to make things better for the ones who come after them." After the ceremony, families toured the Heritage Center. Children ran through the same rooms where Sarah Jordan had raised her family. Parents used the computers to research their family trees. Teenagers learned about the history of land ownership after the Civil War. In Sarah's bedroom, now converted into a museum exhibit, visitors could read her journal entries and see her personal belongings. The entry from 1895 about building for people we will never meet was displayed prominently on the wall. Michael found little James in the basement, standing in front of the family tree painted on the wall. His 6-year-old grandson was tracing the names with his finger, From Sarah Jordan at the top to his own name at the bottom. Grandpa Mike, will my children's names go on this wall too? They will, little man. And their children's names, and their children's children's names. This wall will keep growing as long as the Jordan family remembers where we came from. Will you tell me more stories about Sarah Jordan? Michael knelt down beside his grandson. I'll tell you every story I know. And when you're older, you'll tell those stories to your children. That's how we keep her memory alive. That evening, after all the visitors had gone home, Michael sat on Sarah's front porch with his family. For generations of Jordans watched the sun set over the land their ancestor had fought to own. Billy Thompson, despite his age and failing health, had insisted on staying for the entire day. He sat in Sarah's rocking chair, looking satisfied for the first time since Michael had known him. "Billy, I want you to know something," Michael said. "Everything good that happened today started with you keeping your promise to Dad. If you hadn't called me 6 months ago, none of this would exist." Billy smiled and patted Michael's hand. "Your daddy knew exactly what he was doing when he asked me to wait until you were 60. He knew you'd be wise enough to make the right choices." "What do you think he would say about all this?" Billy looked around at the restored house, at the families who had spent the day learning about their heritage, at the 4 generations of Jordans gathered together. "I think he'd say that Sarah Jordan built her house with love, and you restored it with love. I think he'd say that's the only way anything lasting ever gets built." As night fell over the 40 acres Sarah Jordan had purchased with her own money, Michael felt a sense of completion he had never experienced before. His father's killers would face justice. The family's heritage was preserved and being shared with others. Young people would get scholarships that could change their lives. But most importantly, the Jordan family story would continue. Little James would grow up knowing about Sarah Jordan's courage, about his great-grandfather's sacrifice, about the importance of using success to lift up others. Marcus Williamson was sentenced to life in prison without parole 2 months later. Lieutenant Webb and Kenneth Hayes received similar sentences. Detective Ray Morrison's family finally had closure about his death. The car theft ring that had operated for decades was completely dismantled. But for Michael, the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the letters he received from scholarship recipients, in the families who discovered their heritage at the center, in his grandson's questions about Sarah Jordan's strength. 1 year after the Heritage Center opened, Michael received a letter from a young woman named Sarah Thompson, Billy's great-niece, and one of the first scholarship recipients. She wrote, "Mr. Jordan, I want you to know that learning about your father's courage has inspired me to study law. I want to help families recover land that was stolen from their ancestors, just like you're doing. Your father's story taught me that heroes aren't just people who achieve great things, they're people who choose to do the right thing when it matters most." Michael framed the letter and hung it in Sarah Jordan's house, next to the family tree, where his father had painted his name just days before his death. The story ended not with revenge or inherited wealth, but with the understanding that true legacy comes from love transformed into action. Sarah Jordan had built a house that sheltered her family for generations. James Jordan had preserved that legacy and taught his son to use success for good. Michael Jordan had restored the house and expanded the legacy to help others. And little James Jordan, now 7 years old, could recite Sarah Jordan's story by heart and understood that someday it would be his turn to carry the family's values forward to children not yet born. The Jordan family had learned that the greatest inheritance isn't money or land, it's the knowledge that you come from people who refused to be broken, who built something lasting with their own hands, and who understood that true success means lifting others up. On quiet evenings, when Michael sat in Sarah's rocking chair watching the sunset over her 40 acres, he could almost hear his father's voice carried on the wind. "You made me proud, son. But more importantly, you made yourself proud. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and tell us your city or country. It's amazing to connect with viewers from all around the world. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring, emotionally engaging stories like this one. We share real-life tales of family, legacy, courage, and the power of doing what's right even when it's difficult. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Stories like these remind us all about the importance of preserving family history, standing up for justice, and using our success to lift others up. Sometimes a simple share can spread kindness and awareness to someone who really needs to hear these messages. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey with the Jordan family. Until next time, remember that every family has a story worth telling, and every generation has the power to make the world better for those who come after them.